I was the youngest. That alone should have made me special, right? But in our family, being last just meant being the easiest to overlook. I'm Sarah, the afterthought. My sister Bridget, 3 years older, had already made partner at her firm by 35. My brother, Daniel, the golden boy, owned 3 properties before I paid off my first used car. And my father, a man who measured worth in trophies and tax brackets, retired last month, but his sense of control still fully employed. We were all gathered tonight at Grafton's, one of those high-end suburban spots where the steak comes with microgreens and the waiters wear ties tighter than my chest. I sat at the far end of the table, sipping a glass of wine I couldn't pronounce, in a chair that felt more ornamental than necessary. Across the room, a couple toasted with laughter, effortless, real. Our table, polished, posed, performative. My mother would have loved it. Everything in place, everyone pretending. It wasn't the first time they invited me to feel small, just the most expensive setting yet. Do you still clean those, medical offices? Bridget's voice pierced the hum of cutlery and conversation like a blade. Heads turned, including one woman who tried, and failed, to hide her smirk. Bridget laughed, raising her glass. At least she's got job security, someone chimed in. Maybe Uncle Terry. My father didn't flinch. Well, she's the only one here who knows her way around a mop. That got the room laughing, loud, long, too long. My hands curled in my lap, gripping the cloth napkin like it might save me from sinking. I felt the burn rising from my chest. Past my throat to my ears, a sympathetic glance came from the table beside us. A stranger, kind eyes, brief nod. It was the only grace I got that night. In families like mine, silence was survival. I let out a soft chuckle, just loud enough to pass for grace, not defiance. Well, someone's got to keep things clean. They moved on like the moment never happened, but my skin remembered, every pore held it. I adjusted my fork and knife, aligning them precisely on the napkin. The silver glinted under the chandelier light. If I couldn't be seen, I could at least be neat. Mum used to say, polish what you can even if they don't see it shine. She meant mirrors and manners, I think, but I heard something else now. I wasn't invited here to belong. I was here to complete the picture. Dad stood, raising his glass. To retirement, to legacy. The room hushed, all attention on the man who ran our family like a business. He listed his properties, achievements, trips to Lake Geneva. And as I've updated my estate plan, I've made sure everything goes where it should. My ears caught it before my brain did. My name, absent. Daniel, Bridget, even his second wife's grandchild. Not me. Applause, I didn't move, I couldn't. My wine glass stayed frozen mid-air, like even it couldn't toast to this. Bridget leaned in, her tone honeyed. Don't take it personally, you're not really the business type. I blinked once, twice. Congratulations, I said, voice flat. Guess I'll stick to mopping. The fork in my hand trembled, not from weakness, from restraint. I excused myself. No one noticed. In the bathroom, I stood before the mirror. The fluorescent lights weren't kind. I looked older than I felt, or maybe exactly how I felt. Worn, used, polished. I reached into my purse, pulling out a scarf. Brown gold, soft, Mum's. I remembered watching her fold it one afternoon, slow, deliberate, the same afternoon she told me, "You don't have to be loud to be strong." But she was wrong. Quiet hadn't saved me. It just made me invisible. They hadn't just cut me from the will, they'd carved me out of the family. I stared at myself, eyes dry, jaw tight. I cleaned more than floors, I whispered. I cleaned their mess for years. I walked back through the restaurant, past polished tables, past waiters pouring more wine for people who never saw me, my chair still pulled out, my dessert fork untouched. No one stopped me, no one looked up. That night they laughed at the maid, but the maid had just quit. The Monday after the dinner, I was back to scrubbing elevator buttons and wiping invisible fingerprints from glass doors. No one called, no one asked if I got home safe, but honestly, I didn't expect them to. Walls were dotted with Bridget's degrees, awards, a magazine cover with her face on it. Chicago's most powerful women in finance. In the drawer beneath the kitchen counter, I found a file folder marked Legacy Holdings. Dad's handwriting. Neat, precise, familiar. I opened it. Every asset listed, properties, shares, trusts, carried her initials. BK Rhodes, mine wasn't there, not even once. I remembered mopping the floor of his office the week those papers were likely drafted. I remember overhearing, "Make sure it's all seamless." I thought he meant the legal language. Now I know he meant my removal. I whispered I wasn't invisible. I was deleted. I took out my phone, snapped one photo, just one. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but it felt like proof. Not enough for court maybe, but enough for me. I slid the folder back, closed the drawer, locked the silence inside. After my shift, I sat at the bus stop on Madison. Same plastic bench, same flickering light overhead. My phone buzzed, barely holding a charge these days. An email. Subject line, "You should know what they did." No sender name. No greeting. Attached was a scanned letter, dated years ago, a copy of a property deed, Mum's name, then mine, then a later version. Bridget's signature, new date, notarized. Below the images, the email ended with, "A friend of your mother." I didn't cry, I didn't gasp, I just read it again and again. I saved the file to my old flash drive, the one with the cracked blue casing. It still worked. I didn't reply, I didn't forward it. The truth doesn't need noise, I thought. It waits. The bus came, I sat by the window, downtown glided past in glass and neon, everyone going somewhere or going home. Me? I wasn't sure where I was headed anymore, but for the first time I didn't feel like I was running. I rested my hand in my coat pocket, fingers brushing the edge of Mum's scarf, that same brown gold fabric. I'd started carrying it everywhere, like armor. I didn't want revenge. Not yet, I wanted clarity. I needed to see the whole picture before pulling a single thread. If silence built their lies, then silence would break them. The bus turned onto Belmont. I looked down at my phone as another email came through. "They're planning to meet tomorrow. You should be there." I didn't flinch, just stared at the screen. My heart was steady, not scared. I got to the high-rise early, just like I always did when I cleaned office lobbies. But this morning wasn't about mopping floors behind mirrored panels. I tucked the flash drive in my sleeve, slid on work gloves, clipped my ID badge, all while feeling every weight behind my spine. Chicago traffic blurred past as I rode the train downtown. From the window, skyscrapers gleamed like fortresses, beautiful, impenetrable. I thought, when you sweep their floors, you see the cracks they hide. I told myself I wasn't here to rage. I was only here to listen. My father's motto echoed in my head, "Business stays clean when people stay quiet." I knew the meeting was happening. I just had to hear the lie in their own voices. I slipped onto the glass corridor outside the executive floor. Behind one door, soft voices, Bridget, Dad. 2 suits I didn't know. I held my breath. "Transfer all assets into the foundation. It protects the legacy." Bridget's voice said, "Another, we'll finalize it today. Sarah doesn't even know this property exists anymore." I pressed my phone microphone to the glass and recorded. The sound cracked, faint but real. I stood still, reflection of myself against the meeting room light, visible yet ignored. My hands trembled, not from fear but rage. I swallowed the heat rising in my chest and stayed silent. Then I turned to leave, rational, cold. But fate didn't let me. An intern, stray name tag Daniel Ruiz, rounded the corner. His eyes flickered when he saw me. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, "but I've been watching. I know what they're doing is wrong." He followed me to the hallway, voice low. "I sent the email," he said. "I'm the one who alerted you." I stared at him, calculating, cautious. "Why risk yourself?" He swallowed. Because my mom used to clean for your mother. She told me about a property she meant to leave to you. The papers were changed after probate. He handed me a printed ledger, property transfers, coded versions of signatures. He peered into my eyes. They're signing the final deed at noon. My chest tightened. I tucked the ledger into my coat. The corridor was silent except for our breathing. Thank you, I said, the first honest words I'd offered in days. He nodded, stepped back. I sank into an empty conference room seat, pushing the glass door shut behind me. Outside was pale light, inside my heart pounding. I thought of Mum's voice. Truth is useless if it makes you cruel. That line rattled in my head as I stared at the ceiling. If I exposed them now, would it serve justice or wreak havoc on what's left of our family? This wasn't about money anymore. It was about her legacy and what dignity I still had. I studied every corner of the room, mapped exits, imagined what I'd say if I stood in front of them. Then Bridget opened the meeting door and saw me, standing in her staging room. She blinked, lips curling in a smirk. Still cleaning floors, huh? She said. I took a breath. For now. Her jaw tightened. Daniel watched from the other side of the glass. I felt a shift. Something inside her hesitated. I glanced down at my watch. It read 11:15. 45 minutes until they erased me completely. I arrived earlier than necessary, dressed in my cleaning uniform but with purpose in my step. Flash drive in my pocket, phone ready. I adjusted my badge at the marble lobby mirror, heart in my ears. The glass walls spoke volumes. You're seen but not heard. I whispered under my breath. They see my body, not my worth. I rode the elevator, thinking of ceilings I dreamt of breaking through, masks I'd worn too long. No regrets, only clarity. Behind the corridor's glass doors, voices echoed before I could press play. Bridget's voice carried, soft but ruthless. She won't suspect. We'll slip it in before she knows. A man answered, the shareholders won't blink if the documents are final. I pressed myself to the wall, listening. The projector flicked. Their screen presented my drafted speech, until it abruptly went dark. A gasp, murmurs, silence filled the room. I clenched fists, they had cut me out. Then the imagery appeared, not mine. A new voice, hers, reading lines I lived nights drafting. Bridget stood, speaking my truth as if born to it. The room applauded before I recognized the betrayal. I raised my phone, clicked the screen, freezing her theft. My reflection fractured in that glass. I was unmasked, silent no more. Inside, anger roared. Outside, I stayed poised. I backed into the hall, exhale long. My phone glowed. I pulled up meeting audio and will files, ready to strike strategically. I'd expose the lie, not with tears, but with proof. Tension gripped me, but my voice would not crack. I rehearsed each word in my head. Bridget caught sight of me at the glass wall. She smirked, posture perfect. Come for your applause? She teased. I matched her gaze. I came back for the truth. The crowd shifted. She paused, cracks in poise. I held the silence, script in hand. My phone buzzed. Top story. Leaked estate documents called into question. Someone was ahead of us both. I turned the moment into weapon. Their silence could no longer shield them. My mother's voice sliced through the murmurs of the audience like a sharp wind. You don't matter! The words landed heavier than any silence I'd endured, reverberating in the hall and ricocheting through every memory I'd tried to bury. Someone gasped in the back. A man muttered, "Did she just—" For a moment I felt detached, as if I'd stepped outside my body and watched the scene unfold with someone else's eyes. Shame coiled around me, tight and suffocating, but I didn't flee. I gripped the microphone, my knuckles whitening, and whispered with quiet defiance, "Maybe I didn't matter to you, but I matter to me now." I sensed the subtle nods from some in the crowd, their eyes flicking toward my mother, whose mask of control was slipping. I stepped down from the stage, not in defeat but in deliberate choice, reclaiming my presence with measured calm. Backstage, Iris met me, her expression a mix of concern and vindication. She explained what I had only begun to suspect. The ceremony wasn't a mere recognition of family members. It was a formalized ritual designed to showcase heirs for generational transfers of assets and control. Every mention, every document, every moment I should have been acknowledged had been meticulously edited to erase me. They wrapped shame in a bow and called it family tradition, Iris said, shaking her head. I remembered the countless times I'd been dressed in plain clothes during family events, told not to stand out, made to fade into the background. Earlier, walking into the fading light of the city streets, I felt a peculiar balance, emptiness from decades of betrayal, yet fullness from the knowledge that I was taking control at last. Later that night, I checked my inbox. A single reply awaited me from the journalist. Meet me tomorrow. I've seen this before. Yours might be the worst case yet. I stared at the message, uncertainty and resolve twisting together. Fear whispered at the edges, but so did relief. Perhaps for the first time my story could be heard, unfiltered, uncut, a testament to everything I had endured and survived. Some stories get buried because they're too painful to tell. Others get buried because someone powerful is holding the shovel. Tonight, I decided not to be buried. The phone call came out of nowhere, a whisper of panic that chilled me through. Your name's been flagged again. Don't come to the firm today. It was Rachel, my former lawyer, her voice trembling, clipped with a fear I had never heard from her before. Why? I asked, my pulse spiking. But she paused, and in that silence, the weight of everything unspoken pressed against me. Then she said, they've made it personal now. I can't risk everything, and the line went dead. Rachel, who once told me, if you have truth, you don't need to yell it, just prove it, had vanished. I scoured the web only to see her entire professional presence erased, like she'd never existed. My legal backup was gone, leaving me exposed and trembling on the edge of helplessness. I couldn't just stay home. I returned to the firm building, determination burning beneath my unease. The receptionist gave me the same rehearsed smile I'd seen countless times before. Rachel? On indefinite leave, a new man unfamiliar appeared in her office, and his presence alone told me I wasn't welcome. He gestured sharply toward the door, words unnecessary. Through a mutual contact, I learned the truth. Rachel had been paid to back off quietly. My case wasn't just a personal battle. It threatened 3 local partnerships tied to estate planning between families. The realization hit me. This wasn't about me alone. It was about silencing anyone who might challenge the system. I felt cornered, but also strangely resolved. If silence was their weapon, my truth would be my counterstrike. That night, anxiety gnawed at me as I rifled through old documents, searching for answers, for leverage. Among the folders, one stood out, Medical Consent 2017. My name was scrawled on the signature page, and yet I had no memory of signing it. Flipping through, I saw a clause that allowed my parents to submit psychological assessments on my behalf. Iris confirmed my suspicion. They had you sign this during your post-surgery sedative phase. Remember the wisdom tooth removal? A flood of anger surged. They had weaponized my own name, my own handwriting, to question my mental competence if I contested the will. Every legal barrier, every subtle trap, meticulously laid over the years, had finally revealed its full scope. But despair, fleeting as it was, gave way to clarity. I recognized a pattern. Each time I rose, they had preemptively set obstacles to clip my wings. My first instinct was defeat. They're always 10 steps ahead, but then I stopped. I had proof, documentation, witnesses, and now an ally in the journalist who already had a head start. I called him. It's bigger than me now, ready to go public? His response was swift. We've already begun, there are others. At that moment, I shifted from victim to participant, from target to exhibit A in a case that could set a precedent for others. I started drafting my own statement, not for the court, but for the court of public truth. Every word calculated, every phrase a brick in the fortress of accountability I was building. Later that night, as the city outside my window hummed with quiet indifference, a text appeared from an unknown number. It read, "You really think people will believe you?" I stared at the message, a mixture of frustration and defiance rising within me. I whispered into the empty room, "They don't have to believe me, they just need to see the proof." It was the moment I realized that the need for validation was gone. The power I had once ceded to their judgment was now my own. I wasn't asking for belief, I was presenting evidence, and in that act, their control began to crumble. Sitting across from the journalist, my hands shook as he slid the envelope toward me. Inside was a tape, but even before I opened it, the weight of what it might contain made my chest tighten. He pressed play. The first seconds filled the room. My father's voice, unmistakable, saying, 218 was always hers. The words struck me like lightning. Every lie, every omission, every shadow of doubt cast over my life seemed to unravel in that instant. The journalist's eyes met mine, calm but urgent. They never expected this to surface. I swallowed hard, committing myself to the moment. "This is all I need, let's roll," I whispered. Skeletal, tense, I absorbed a lifetime of secrets into those fleeting seconds, realizing that the past had finally given me a weapon. The tape unfolded further, showing Dad facing the camera, eyes solemn. He named names, detailing how Maris and Estelle had replaced documents, shifting ownership, erasing evidence, rewriting history. "I never meant for Mariella to be erased," he admitted, voice quivering. The revelation stabbed me. He had loved me, yes, but he had been silenced. My throat constricted as I imagined the coercion, the pressure that forced him into complicity. I felt tears prick, but I swallowed them. This wasn't my moment to mourn, it was my moment to act. Every syllable he uttered bolstered the foundation of truth I had been gathering for weeks, every word a confirmation that my pursuit was justified, and the fight had only just begun. The journalist then placed a briefcase in front of me. I opened it cautiously. Inside, the weight of decades pressed against me. Financial records, affidavits, property transfers. My eyes darted across signatures I didn't recognize, tax returns hidden under layers of misdirection, legal papers that painted a meticulous plan to rob me of my stake. Maris, Estelle, even Curtis had conspired together to strip me silently of any claim. My pulse raced, my hands clenched the edges of the briefcase. They had set me up from birth, ensuring power remained with them. Yet amid the shock, a cold determination seeped in. I was angry, yes, but in that anger, I found control. I would dismantle their carefully constructed facade, piece by piece. By late afternoon, I found myself standing in the driveway of Maris and Estelle's home. I hadn't called ahead. I carried the tape and records, heart hammering against my ribs. Through the windows, I saw a gathering, family, friends, all arranged in careful display, unaware of the storm about to enter. I stepped inside quietly, each footfall loud in my ears. Estelle's eyes flicked to me. Maris's jaw tightened. I handed the tape to a guest, voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Listen, hear what Dad said." Murmurs spread through the room, an electric tension crackling in the air. The world seemed to pause, waiting for the truths buried for decades to finally surface. As the tape played, the room's focus intensified. A document appeared, a civil suit filed against me earlier that morning. Trespass, defamation, theft of data. They had preemptively constructed their legal traps. I realized then that when I walked through that door, the cops were already en route. The revelation stunned everyone, including me, but it confirmed what I suspected. The battle wasn't just personal, it was institutional. And as the distant wail of sirens approached, I locked eyes with my mother. Her smile was chilling. "You gave me no choice," she said, each word deliberate, calculating. The weight of her control attempted to settle over the room, but I was ready. The voice of my father was now my shield, my truth, my sword. I sat in the control room, the hum of equipment around me, staring at the screens as the journalist cued the live feed. My father's confession played in full, his voice steady, naming names, restoring my identity in a way years of silence had never allowed. The financial documents followed, layers of deception peeled back for all to see. Social media lit up instantly. Messages of support, outrage, disbelief. My chest tightened with a mix of exhilaration and tension. I knew Maris and Estelle would react fiercely. This exposure was my leverage, my moment to reclaim what had been stolen. I whispered to myself, steadying my breath. Now is the time. Now is my moment. The broadcast rolled out meticulously, showing the stolen inheritance, falsified deeds, and financial manipulations. Commentary dissected the implications, laying bare the scheming and legal maneuvering that had tried to erase me. I watched Estelle's expression shift from smug confidence to open disbelief. Comments poured in, hashtags trending, debates erupting. In that chaos, I felt clarity. I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was a force demanding recognition, a voice that could no longer be ignored. Every message, every reaction, fortified the resolve I had been nurturing quietly for years. Later, I walked into the corporate boardroom, the briefcase of evidence in hand, pulse sharp with anticipation. Maris and Estelle attempted to block me, citing legal filings meant to intimidate, but the broadcast had changed the game. Legal advisors presented the evidence, and the board, hesitant at first, sided decisively with me. The atmosphere shifted. Power that had long been denied began to swing toward my favor. I laid out my vision, highlighting contributions they had dismissed, and saw allies emerge, advisors who had once been overlooked now supporting my rightful claim. The room, tense and watchful, became a stage for restoration, not confrontation alone. Confrontation escalated as I faced Maris and Estelle directly. Words sharpened, accusations thrown, but I remained calm, measured, using every document, every recording strategically. The family lawyer confirmed what I had already suspected. Everything had been wrongfully taken. Estelle tried to manipulate the narrative, but I countered at every turn, leaving her speechless. For the first time in decades, I felt control, validation, and power settle around me. My voice, once suppressed, carried authority. My stance wasn't just resistance, it was reclamation. Every corner of the room bore witness to a transformation long overdue. As the day faded, I replayed my father's voice in my mind. You were always meant to take this path. Relief mingled with reflection. The battle for recognition and restitution had reached a critical victory. Yet I knew healing would take longer, both within the family and inside myself. Tonight the world knew the truth. The boardroom, the broadcast, the evidence, all pointed toward justice, but the heart carries its scars. I exhaled, a slow release of tension, understanding that while victories could be claimed, reconciliation remained a distant, fragile hope. Tonight the fight was won, the journey not yet complete. I woke up with sunlight slipping through the curtains, feeling the strange combination of relief and residual tension. Messages of support were still flooding in from friends, colleagues, and even strangers who had followed the exposé. My mind replayed the previous day. Each confrontation, each revelation, each moment where the balance had finally tipped in my favor. Some family members remained distant, cautious, their faces a mix of embarrassment and reflection. Others slowly reached out with tentative apologies. I sat on the edge of the bed, considering the divide between public justice and private healing. In the quiet of that morning, a first seed of acknowledgement appeared in my thoughts. A subtle nudge that maybe, just maybe, my family could start to recognize what they had done. Later, I sat down with Maris and Estelle, the air between us thick with tension. Their expressions were guarded, a mixture of remorse and lingering defensiveness. I spoke calmly but firmly. asserting boundaries and ensuring that my voice was heard and respected. The conversation uncovered layers of unspoken emotions: shame, guilt, envy, and a tentative hope for change. They stumbled through admissions, words halting but genuine. I emphasized the lessons I had learned: strength, resilience, and self-worth. Forgiveness, I realized, would not mean erasing the past, but defining the narrative on my own terms, shaping reconciliation in a way that honored my experience and agency. The afternoon found me reflecting quietly on personal growth and setting future boundaries. The ordeal had imparted clarity about trust, ambition, and the intricacies of family dynamics. I began planning for professional resurgence, reclaiming my career and investments, and restoring a sense of personal identity. There was a sense of responsibility too, using the reclaimed power to mentor younger family members or others who might encounter similar patterns. Writing in my private journal, I captured insights and intentions, defining boundaries with remaining toxic influences while celebrating the progress I had made. The exercise was grounding, proof that resilience was not abstract but actionable. As evening settled, subtle gestures of acknowledgement emerged: small nods from my parents, a quiet word from a previously distant relative, and supportive conversations with allies highlighted the power of connection. Emotional arcs, once strained and fractured, began to align in muted harmony. The twist of final reconciliation crystallized, not in grand gestures, but in small, heartfelt admissions. I felt closure mingled with lingering care, understanding that the past shaped me but did not define me. From timid daughter to empowered woman, I recognized the evolution of self through adversity, measuring victory not in vengeance but in resilience and inner peace. That night, I sat alone on the porch, the stars above reflecting quiet clarity. Thoughts wandered through the weeks, the confrontations, the victories, and the lessons. I breathed deeply, aware that while the battle was largely won, the journey forward remained mine to shape. I whispered softly to myself, I reclaimed my voice, my rights, and my dignity, but tomorrow is mine to shape. The weight of the past had lifted, leaving space for growth, for reflection, and for the life I intended to lead, guided by the knowledge that my voice, once silenced, now carried its full power.